A Giannis Antetokounmpo trade could still be in the works this offseason. According to Shams Charania, it is still possible Giannis leaves Milwaukee before the start of this season. We'd heard some of these Giannis rumors earlier on in the offseason. Those kind of quieted down for a little bit, but now, just yesterday on Monday, August 4th, Shams said that Giannis is still contemplating his future in Milwaukee. Directly here from Shams himself. Sources tell me there's still nothing set in stone about whether Giannis will stay in Milwaukee or whether he will be leaving. There's been some very real conversations over the last week or so. The constant question that Giannis has thought is, can I win a championship with this roster? Is this roster going to be one for this upcoming year and 2026, 2027? He is asking that question over and over. And Shams added as well with this report that there are multiple NBA teams waiting in the wings that have offers ready to go on the table for Giannis if he does ask out. They're just waiting for that word. So, could the Sixers be one of those teams that tries to get in the mix to trade for the Greek Freak? That's what we'll get into here on today's show. Real quick, before we do, the NBA season is going to be here before you know it. Actually, in just a couple of months in October is when the season gets underway. You got to make sure you're up to date with everything going on with the Philadelphia 76ers, and we can provide that for you right here on 76ers Now by Chat Sports. 23,564 strong. Join the family, get informed, and get ready for the start of the season. Look, I thought some of this Giannis stuff had cooled off to the point where I wasn't sure Giannis was really going to be traded at all, at least for this season. I thought, of course, they let Dame go. They bring in Miles Turner. They make some moves. Yeah, the roster still didn't look great, but we hadn't heard about this Giannis stuff in a little bit. I figured maybe it'll pick up traction again if they're really bad at the deadline or potentially after the end of this upcoming season. But here comes Shams out of nowhere with this new report saying that Giannis is really looking at the championship level contention of this squad. Now, look, Giannis himself, we know the kind of player he is, right? I don't got to tell you too much about Giannis. MVP, Defensive Player of the Year candidate, obviously has won a championship. Like, he is as good as it gets. I think he's a top 3 player in this league pretty easily at this point in his career. He's established himself and done it all in Milwaukee, but now he's reaching the point where they made a couple of moves and he's not sure that roster can compete. And I don't think that roster can compete either. Like, you let Dame go, right? Yes, they signed Miles Turner. Good addition, right? You replace Brook Lopez with Miles Turner. I think Miles Turner a better player at this point in their careers. But instead of that, you got Kyle Kuzma and then a whole bunch of whatever. That team really doesn't have a shot, in my opinion, of making a run to the NBA Finals. So if what Shams is saying is credible and if what he's reporting is true, that Giannis is looking at the championship contention of Milwaukee, I don't know how he can look at that roster unbiased and say, yeah, this is a championship level team. Now, as it pertains to Philadelphia, talking about possibly getting Giannis to Milwaukee or to Philly, it's pretty tough. Now, they had the money to make it work. Of course, the first thing you want to think of when talking about these star trades is how do you match your salaries first and foremost, especially in today's NBA and today's CBA, and then how do you sort of get the rest of that to work out after that. The money side of things isn't too difficult for Philadelphia. Giannis, of course, making a very, very big salary, $54 million this year, $58 the next year, $62 in 2027-28 with a player option. Pretty typical standard superstar level money when a guy signs a max deal. And we're going to see these numbers just keep going up. De'Aaron Fox just signed an absolutely massive, massive extension. So obviously the trade would have to include one of Embiid or Paul George. Embiid obviously making a lot of money the next few years with that new extension he signed. Now, 2026, 27 through 2028, 29, it's not set in stone the amount he's making. It depends on how much the cap goes up, but obviously a ton of money, possibly $67 million in a few seasons. And then Paul George as well. Of course, we know the salary they signed him to last offseason, also making a ton of money. So Philadelphia has the contracts in Embiid, in Paul George, to be able to match the salary of Giannis Antetokounmpo. But look, you talk about these two guys. These are two of what a lot of people think are the worst contracts in the entire NBA because of their age and their injury history and the decline of play we've seen as of late, especially as it pertains to Paul George. So look, if Giannis if Milwaukee, is willing to take on either Embiid or Paul George for Giannis, like by all means, I'm willing to include one of those two in the trade. But there's a 0% chance, zero, that Milwaukee would do just Embiid and a couple picks or just Paul George and a couple picks for Giannis and call it a day, right? It's gonna cost a lot of extra assets, even on top of those two guys, because their values by their contracts and by their injury histories are not nearly what Giannis is right now. So, what else would you have to throw in there? I mean, it's gonna be, in my opinion, some of these young guys: VJ Edgecombe, Jared McCain, Justin Edwards. Maybe they'd even be interested in someone like a Janai Broom or an Adam Bona. Like the Sixers have some young pieces, and Milwaukee is definitely going to be asking for at least one, two, maybe even three of these young players on top of probably that 2028 Clippers pick that Philadelphia does own. Probably some extra draft capital as well. We're talking about a top three player in the world right now. You're going to be asking a lot for him in a trade who's still firmly in his prime. Now, we'll get into more of what the specific package might be for Giannis and my thoughts on adding some of these young guys into the mix. But I just want to get a baseline. What say you guys? Should the Sixers at least try to pull off a Giannis trade? If he does request out of Milwaukee, would you at least like Philadelphia to inquire and see what the price might be? Or are you totally good? You don't need Giannis over here in Philadelphia. Just give me a simple yes or no down in the comments section. Now, before we get to some more of my thoughts on this deal, I got to tell you guys about this deal. What an absolute steal. You can get this pullover 76ers hoodie for just $28 when it was originally priced at $70. That's right. That well over 50% off there. If you use that link, chatsports.com/76pullover, you click on that and you can go take advantage while the iron's still hot. But like, I know some of you might be thinking, why do I need a hoodie? You know, it's August, it's hot out. Well, guess what? October, November, December, the basketball season will be here before you know it, as I mentioned earlier. And by the time that comes around, the weather gets colder. This won't be on sale like it is right now for just $28. You kidding me? $28 for this hoodie? Again, an absolute steal. Chatsports.com/76pullover. Take advantage before it is too late. So we know how Daryl Morey operates, right? His entire GMing career, you could say, he's always been a guy who's gone after the stars, and he hasn't been afraid to put all his chips on the table and go all in and go after some of these superstar level players. Now, recently, this past season, instead, he wants a little bit more of a youth movement, looking to maybe reset a little bit, but I still don't think that at his core, Daryl Morey has really changed all that much. So I do think if Giannis were to ask out, Morey would at least be somewhat interested. Now, the question that Morey will have to ask himself, and if you're running the Sixers, you'll have to ask yourself in this situation is, do you decide to blow up this newly built young core that really over the past couple of seasons, we've seen a total transformation in the young talent on this team? Do you get rid of all of that for Giannis Antetokounmpo? Or do you say, these young guys, they're the future of this team. We want to hold on to them? Because it's going to take, as I mentioned, at least two, maybe three of these young guys plus some picks to get in a player like Giannis. Now, there are two scenarios in which I could see if the Sixers do make a move for Giannis, what the team could look like. The first, obviously, I mentioned it's either trading Paul George or it's trading Joel Embiid. So in this case, if you do trade Paul George here, you could be left with a starting lineup: Tyrese Maxey, Quentin Grimes, I don't think would be involved in the deal, Kelly Oubre, Giannis, and Embiid. That is a really good starting lineup, assuming health. Embiid, Giannis will be a discussing duo. Tyrese Maxey to me is off the table in a Giannis trade. There's no point of trading Tyrese Maxey away for Giannis just to bring Giannis in, and then you're still surrounded with an injury-prone Joel Embiid and an injury-prone Paul George. There's really no point of doing that. So Maxey's off the table. But, you know, your depth would take a hit in both these scenarios because I think VJ Edgecombe is absolutely somebody that the Bucks would be demanding they get back in a move. And they'd probably also ask for Jared McCain. So this is kind of what your core five would be. Now, if you say I'd rather trade away Joel Embiid because you don't think his injury history is going to get any better and the contract, the extension he signed, and maybe Milwaukee values Embiid a little bit more than Paul George, well, then you're kind of left with something like this, right? Where you slide in Adam Bona at the 5, Giannis at the 4, still have Paul George. You can obviously, run some lineups with Giannis at the 5, and you can throw Oubre in that starting lineup as well. But, in all these scenarios, you also have to think about your depth and your young core takes a hit. because VJ Edgecombe probably gone. Jared McCain probably gone. They might even ask for a Justin Edwards or an Adam Bono or a Janiyah Broome again because it's Giannis and because he is an MVP level player, top 3 player in the league. The Bucks aren't going to give him up for absolutely nothing. So, going back to the original question, would you trade some of these young pieces away for Giannis? I don't think I would. I do not like the idea of already dismantling this young core, even if it is Giannis. And even if he is, again, one of the best players in the league. You just drafted VJ Edgecombe 3rd overall. We've seen 20-something games of Jared McCain in Philadelphia. Justin Edwards, we saw 1 year of what he can be as an undrafted player. And sure, you bring in Giannis, you're a championship-level contender, especially if you can hold on to Tyrese Maxey. And even if you hold on to Joel Embiid, you send out Paul George, that's a really, really talented team. But if things don't work out, you have nothing to fall back on. And you're finally building up these young pieces. And we've seen teams like the Thunder, like the Pacers, with all their depth, and especially in the Thunder's case, a lot of young players who've developed over the course of time. Like, you have this young talent. I get it's tempting to trade it for a player like Giannis, but especially in the case of VJ Edgecombe and even Jared McCain a little bit, I want to hold on to these guys. I want to see what they can do. Now, of course, Giannis being traded doesn't just impact Philadelphia if he is traded to the Sixers, because a lot of other landing spots he could go that could shake things up in the Eastern Conference. The Knicks are a team that have been heavily rumored to be interested in Giannis Antetokounmpo, and pretty much everybody but Jalen Brunson would be on the table in that potential trade. So if New York does make a move for a Giannis, who've, again, rumored to be on him for a while now, that would really shake things up in the East, because you have Jalen Brunson, you have Giannis, you're probably trading away Karl Anthony Towns. We'll see who they would keep between OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, but they would be a very, very scary team. Miami is another team that has long been rumored to be interested in Giannis. Now, what exactly do they have to give up? Would you have to give up a Bam Adebayo or Tyler Hero? Probably going to be one of those two guys to make the money work. Could he go to San Antonio? This would help the Sixers, obviously, get him out of the Eastern Conference. Although, man, Giannis and Victor Wembanyama would be absolutely amazing for the foreseeable future. The Nets are a team that have also had rumored interest in Giannis. Apparently, they've kind of been building up to make a move for him, but no talent really over there in Brooklyn. Mavericks are an interesting one as well with Cooper Flag. We've seen, obviously, the moves Nico Harrison's willing to make. Could they trade Cooper Flag and some extra stuff to go get a Giannis Antetokounmpo? Because, again, we go back to what Giannis was saying about his team. He needs to see his team compete for a championship this season. Gary Trent Jr., I'm sorry. I'm kind of laughing just looking at this lineup they're running out there right now. Gary Trent Jr., Kevin Porter Jr. as your starting backcourt is atrocious. Kyle Kuzma is not a good player at this point in his career. Super inefficient, not a winning player anymore. Of course, he won years ago in the bubble with the Lakers. You have Giannis, you have Miles Turner, and then off the bench, Gary Harris, AJ Green, Andre Jackson, Tyler Smith, Taurean Prince, still have Bobby Portis over there. It's just not a good enough team to win. So, yeah, Jericho Sims is in there as the main backup center for this Milwaukee Bucks team. Like, it's just not looking good for them. So I could see a world where Giannis does ask out. I just don't know that Philadelphia would be the ideal destination, even from my perspective as a Sixers fan. But look, you heard my take on it. I would not trade away this entire young core for Giannis. If it's just a Jared McCain and an Embiid and some picks, I think I would do that. But if they're asking for VJ Edgecombe and Jared McCain and Justin Edwards on top of multiple picks plus another player, I think I would have to say no to that deal. But you let me know, if you are Daryl Morey and you could make a move like this, would you trade away this young core for Giannis Antetokounmpo? Give me a T for trade, P for pass. Let me know down in the comment section. Of course, as always, don't forget to hit that sub button, and we'll see you next time right here on 76ers Now.